Ecuador's National Electoral Council has decided to reform the regulations and authorize in-person voting. Guatemala's highest electoral body has made official the electoral triumph of the Semilla Movement's ticket, which had been suspended by the Citizens Registry. And Hurricane Idalia became the fourth hurricane of the current season as it moves away from Cuba, leaving rains in the west of the country. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, as always, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. On Monday, Ecuador's National Electoral Council has decided to reform the regulations and authorize in-person voting. The electoral body reformed the regulations of the extraordinary presidential and legislative elections in view of the October 15th runoff. In this way, Ecuadorians living abroad will vote in person both in the second round of the presidential and legislative elections. After the problems faced with the electronic vote attributed by the authorities to alleged attacks. The measure comes in response to the claims of the Ecuadorian diaspora regarding the right to vote for a new president and the lawmakers. And in Guatemala, the highest electoral body has made official the electoral triumph of the Semilla Movement's ticket, or the ballot, which has been suspended by the Citizens Registry. A week after the second round of the presidential elections was held, and after a meeting between the president-elect Bernardo Arévalo and the current president of Guatemala, Alejandro Giammattei, to discuss the transition of governments, the Registry of the Citizens of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal suspended the Semilla Movement. Minutes later, the directive of the same body officially acknowledged the triumph. In this way, the elected president reiterated the court's decision and clarified that the ruling of the registry was not appropriate. And the Guatemalan police arrested former representative of an anti-corruption commission, Claudia González. González is part of a group of around 30 former justice operators who investigated corruption cases in the country and are now in detention or exile. The 56-year-old former official described her detention as a criminalization, harassment, and unnecessary criminal persecution by the public prosecutor's office. The office has conducted a crackdown against former justice operators and also opened a case for alleged money laundering against José Rubén Zamora, the owner of a newspaper that investigated corruption cases and who was sentenced in May to 6 years in prison. The prosecutor's office has also criticized for its interference in the recently concluded electoral process and for opening an investigation against the Semilla party with the alleged purpose of preventing its candidate from winning the August 20th presidential runoff elections. The Colombian President Gustavo Petro met on Monday with his Costa Rican counterpart, Rodrigo Chávez, and with the head of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights in San Jose, the capital of Costa Rica. The meetings take place during a two-day visit by the Colombian president to the Central American nation, following an invitation by his Costa Rican counterpart, Rodrigo Chávez. The leaders of the two nations agreed to work together to defend their coffee in the world market. According to Gustavo Petro, the agreement seeks to obtain greater income for an emblematic product of both countries, at a time when the international price of the grain and the export of both nations are falling. The presidents also discussed tourism, security, and migration issues, which will be addressed later in working commissions headed by the foreign ministers of both countries.
We discussed very strategic matters, such as climate change, peace for the region, and taking huge amount of resources away from the bad people.
We have discussed even more complex issues like migration, a new and growing phenomenon on which we have to build a common Latin American policy.
In other topics, the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and the Argentinian Economy Minister Sergio Massa met to deepen cooperation ties. Da Silva and Massa addressed issues on the bilateral agenda, such as using the Chinese currency, the yuan, in their trade exchanges, the opening of agricultural markets, the bidding process for the second section of the President Nestor Kirchner gas pipeline, and Argentina's BRICS membership. The Argentinian minister also met with his Brazilian counterpart Fernando Haddad, with whom he discussed a payment mechanism worth $600 million for bilateral trade. The Brazilian President, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, has announced that he will be signing a bill that makes permanent a regular readjusted the minimum wage. On August 24th, the Senate approved the temporary provision on minimum wage adjustment. The temporary order determined the value of the new minimum pay at 1,320 reals, about $272, an increase of 2.8% over the amount set during the previous administration of Jair Bolsonaro. The increase takes into consideration the accumulated inflation in the previous year, the increase in the gross domestic product, ensuring that there is a real year-on-year valuation of the minimum wage. Thus, Lula is fulfilling one of his main campaign promises. In the United States, a faculty member of the University of North Carolina was reported dead on Monday after a shooting in the campus of that learning institution. Chancellor Kevin Gushwish said at a Monday evening news conference that shots were reported at 1:02 p.m. local time at the school's Cody laboratories and that a suspect had been taken into custody shortly after 2:30 p.m. Officials reported no injuries or other fatalities. According to the reports from the independent organization Archive of Violence, there have been at least 476 mass shootings so far in 2023, twice the number reported in 2022. And despite the U.S. sanctions and Western media narratives of a spiraling economy, Venezuela thrives thanks to its resilience and the strength of its people. To showcase the reality of the South American nation beyond misconceptions or fake news, TeleSUR presents the series Venezuela on the Move, touring the nation from north to south, from the mountains to the plainlands. In its first episode, our colleague Adriana Sivori takes us to Portuguesa State, where prosperity rises from the cornfields. Let's see.
In oil-rich Venezuela, corn is planted. It is part of Venezuelans' daily diet, and depending on the variety, is also used for animal feed. Its cultivation responds to climate behavior. However, experts assure that with good soil moisture management is well maintained.
The land here is privileged, with very good yields. In previous years, we have been declining, but we are trying to get ahead with good production and good yields.
Production seems to be advancing in the center of the nation, where Los Manires is located, one of the private farms that produces corn. Antonio works here. He's an innate expert and crop specialist.
I graduated in 2018, but I have been working with my father since I was a child. A great teacher with empirical knowledge, very valuable to put into practice here, and greatly complements the scientific knowledge the university gave me.
They carefully check each plant. This farm is expecting this year's production of corn cob to exceed 9,000 kilograms.
Normal plague, and here is the will of God, as we say. Everything is normal here, everything is out of danger. The only thing left to do is to remove weeds. But everything is under control.
Corn is the most important crop in the agricultural sector, which increased by 52%, something that was achieved despite of the blockade imposed by the United States, according to government data.
We already have businessmen from Argentina, from China, from Turkey, from Uruguay, who are cultivating in alliance with our producers. It was not that they came here and grabbed the land. No, it is with our producers, financing that production, which was one of the drawbacks we had regarding financing. Because if we did not have any revenue with reeds, how could we finance ourselves, right?
In this Caribbean country, according to government data, the overall cereal production grew by 48% compared to the previous year.
Adriana Sibur y Jesús Romero, TeleSUR.
And now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Hurricane Idalia became the fourth hurricane of the current season, as it moves away from Cuba, leaving rains in the west of the country. Cuban authorities decreed cyclone alarm phase for the provinces of Pinar del Río, Artemisa, and the special municipality of Isla de la Juventud, and the alert phase for the provinces of Havana and Mayabeque as the storm neared the Cape San Antonio, the westernmost point of the island. According to the Meteorological Institute, Tropical Storm Idalia became a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour. As it continues to move away from Cuba, the probability of heavy and intense rains will remain high in the western region. The feeding branch of this tropical organism may also cause rains in the central region. Poland and the Baltic states, members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, warned that they will close their borders with Belarus in the event of any military incident or a massive migration push by Minsk. The governments of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia argued that the warnings were due to growing tensions at NATO and European Union borders with Belarus, with alleged troops which they claim are diverting African and Middle Eastern migrants to Europe, despite the established barriers. The nations demanded that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko expel the Wagner mercenaries and the migrants from his territory, as well as from the border areas. The Polish Interior Minister, Mariusz Kaminski, acknowledged that closing all the borders with Belarus will have negative consequences, though. On the other hand, the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that if the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Polish authorities close their borders with Belarus, they will only harm themselves and their citizens. The head of state stressed that Belarus is a peaceful country and has no pretensions towards its western neighbors, reiterating that Belarus does not need Polish, Lithuanian, or Latvian lands, as his country does not work through any of them. The French President Emmanuel Macron informed that his ambassador will remain in Niger despite the expiration of the interim government's ultimatum. The French head of state insisted that Paris condemns the coup and will not change its position, and asserted that it will continue its full support to President Mohamed Bazoum. Macron also said that the French ambassador did not heed the ultimatum, as he considers that the order did not come from legitimate authorities. The Nigerian Foreign Ministry issued on Friday a 48-hour deadline for Sylvain It to leave the African country after he refused to meet with the new Niamey leaders.
We have to be clear, coherent, consistent, otherwise, who will listen to us? In which African capitals will they be able to say that we have a policy of partnership with a leader if when something like this happens, we cannot support him? So I think our policy is the right one. It is based on the courage of President Bazoum and the commitment of our diplomats and our ambassador on the ground, who stand firm despite the pressure.
And the French president also reminded that his country does not recognize or support the fascist government under any circumstances.
Our policy is simple. We do not recognize the putschists. We support a president who has not resigned, to whom we remain committed, and we support the diplomatic actions, and if decided, the military actions of ECOWAS, in a partnership approach which is the one I presented last February.
In other topics, India's government reported that trade between New Delhi and Moscow grew by 190% in the first half of 2023. According to New Delhi's Ministry of Trade and Industry, the growth reached $33.5 billion between January and July this year. During the period, imports of Russian products in India reached $31.5 billion, 3 times more than in the first half of 2022. Meanwhile, the support of crude oil and oil derivatives, the main item of these imports, multiplied 4.4 times, reaching $25.2 billion. Meanwhile, Indian exports to Russia increased by 70% to $1.9 billion. Pharmaceuticals continue to be the most important item, with sales growth of 4.5% to $84 million. And TeleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Libya's unity government temporarily suspended its top diplomat, Najla Mangoush, after her unexpected meeting with her Israeli counterpart, Eli Cohen. The High Council of State described the meeting as an offense to the rich history of struggle by the Libyan people in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. The government body urged all the competent authorities to take the necessary measures and responsibility. Following the decision, the government authorities announced the launching of an administrative investigation to be carried out by a commission presided over by the Minister of Justice. The meeting between Mangoush and Cohen also sparked social protests in several cities against the top diplomat's actions. In this context, on Monday, Libyan Prime Minister visited the Palestinian embassy in the capital, Tripoli, to affirm his country's continued support to the Palestinian cause. The visit came after Dbeibah suspended Foreign Minister Najla Mangoush and referred her for an investigation over a meeting last week with her Israeli counterpart in Italy. Mangoush fled the country a day after Israel revealed the visit, news that prompted scattered street protests in the chaos-stricken North African nation. During his meeting with Palestinian ambassador Mohammed Rohal, Dbeibah affirmed his country's support of Palestinians and that his previous foreign minister does not represent the government's position. And the United Nations Special Representative to Mali, Il Ghazim Ouane, said the second phase of the withdrawal of the UN peacekeepers from the country will be challenging. The UN representative said the size of the convoys, involving hundreds of lorries and the long distances they travel over inhospitable terrain, leave them vulnerable. The UN peacekeeping mission, known as MINUSMA, has until December 31st to exit Mali after a decade of struggling to stabilize the country's security environment amid separatist rebellions. The 13,000-man mission was ordered to withdraw earlier this year under the demands of Mali's ruling junta, following the pullout of French troops in 2022. Earlier this month, 4 UN soldiers were wounded in an attack on operations to exit the birth base in the north of the country. According to Wayne, withdrawal operations in other areas have also been targeted.
The mission continues to encourage parties to reach an agreement to avoid unnecessary incidents whose consequences could be considerable. Such incidents would complicate the withdrawal process, negatively impact the work of UN bodies following the mission's closure, and seriously impair prospects for the resumption of the implementation of the peace agreements.
Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan told troops in Port Sudan on Monday that time has come to end the rebellion, but the paramilitaries promising victory 4 months into a brutal war. The army chief comments come a day after his deputy-turned-rival, Mohamed Hamdan Diaglo, released a statement detailing a 10-point vision to end the war and build a new state. The plan calls for civilian rule based on democratic norms and a single professional national military institution, the very sticking point which turned the former allies into rivals. The paramilitary rapid support forces led by Diaglo had besieged the army chief inside military headquarters in Khartoum for the past 4 months. But last week, Burhan made his first public foray outside the headquarters to review the troops in parts of the war-scarred country, leading to speculations that both leaders had negotiated a deal, a move that army chief staunchly denied in his defiant speech to soldiers in Port Sudan. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.